Hey, it's Kyle here, and today I'll be reviewing The Last Emperor of Mexico by Edward Shawcross. This is a nonfiction book that explores a really weird part of the history of Mexico and honestly international politics in the mid-1800s when Emperor Napoleon III of France attempted to install a European monarch to rule Mexico. It's one of those things when you hear it, almost like, oh, that's like the plot for a really bad alternate history story. But it's one of those things that's so weird. It's definitely an event of history I was aware of. I was aware of that this Austrian prince, Maximilian, briefly ruled as the Emperor of Mexico. And I knew the French were a little bit involved. I didn't know exactly why. I didn't know all the backstory. I knew it was a very short reign and related to U.S. history. I knew this was mainly happening during the American Civil War, and that was one of the ideas that the European powers and individuals who favored this idea knew the United States government was not okay with the European powers meddling with affairs in North and South America, so they thought they could get away with this while the United States was distracted by the Civil War. So I knew that a little bit, but that's the basic, very general facts of the story. Nothing very specific, not the details of it. And honestly, after reading the story, it's even more weird and unusual than I really understood. Very interesting, though. I really love this book a lot. I've never read a book by Edward Shawcross. I really enjoyed his writing style a lot. I found it very, very interesting. He really does a great job of exploring the individuals involved on both sides of this debate, really trying to do his best to explain the mentality of all the individuals involved and how they justify this action. Very fascinating. Basic concept, and this is one part of the story I didn't know, but obviously I knew there had been a lot of civil wars in Mexico around this time, and basically it was between a conservative faction and a liberal faction. What I didn't know is a lot of individuals in the conservative faction basically thought the best form of government of Mexico would be a conservative-led government ruled by a European monarch. They thought that would give that stability to the government, kind of international prestige. They were looking back at the stability and the supposed glory days of when Spain ruled Mexico, and they kind of wanted to get back to that, but still have Mexico independent. So, like, their compromise would be a European monarch would rule Mexico, but it would be ruled as an independent state. And, you know, all the Congress would be Mexican and stuff like that. So I didn't really know there was a faction in Mexico that was actually in favor of a European monarch being installed. Then on the other side, the reasons why Napoleon III bought into this idea, and how at that time he was really focused on expanding French influence around the world. He's trying to basically build back France as a major world power, getting back to the days of when it was ruled by Napoleon. But he realizes, he can't really conquer Europe the way Napoleon did, and also it didn't really work that well for him. But he knows the French military is not really strong enough to do that. So instead, he really looks to expand his influence around the world by establishing colonies. In Mexico, when he becomes aware of this Mexican faction looking for a European monarch to rule them, he realizes maybe this is a way I can get French influence in Mexico and in the Americas, but not really have it be officially French colony. Maybe if the French just back this effort, we can get all the benefits of it, but the actual cost of running this new kingdom and manning it with a military would actually be handled by the Mexicans themselves. So Napoleon III is the one that kind of really takes it on his hand to kind of champion the idea in Europe and basically recruit a European prince to do this. The book basically explains why Maximilian, who was the brother of the emperor of the Austrian Empire, is the one that's selected, and why he is willing to leave Europe as a very rich prince, and why he's willing to go to a country he's never been to before. He's never been to the Americas in general, but he's definitely never been to Mexico, and why he thinks it's a good idea, and why he thinks the Mexicans actually will accept him as their emperor. And then it goes into great details about what Maximilian's few years in Mexico was like, how he tried to rule, what his goals were, how he responded once he realized, there are some people in Mexico that want me to be here, but a huge majority don't want me to be here. And basically, as he grappled in some ways he was in denial, that he realized, he did not really understand the Mexican mentality, it was so different from Europe. He was struggling with that, and he basically tried to rule in a lot of ways like he was still in Europe, and it just wasn't really working. And then we also get to explore all the various individuals involved on the Mexican side of this conflict, both on the conservative and liberal side, in this civil war that's raging nonstop while Maximilian's trying to rule this new empire that he's establishing. He has grand visions for that. He believes Mexico will become the superpower for the Americas, and to place the United States as really the power for this hemisphere. In his opinion, with all the resources Mexico has, under his wise leadership, Mexico will become this world power, and the United States will kind of fall to a secondary power. Obviously, we know Mexico is not ruled by a European monarch anymore, so we know it didn't really go too well for Maximilian. So I'd really encourage you, if you're interested in kind of like learning a little bit about an element of, I think, world history that a lot of people are not really that aware of, I'd really encourage you to check this book out. In fact, I would say the main way most Americans would be aware that this event took place is the battle that inspired the holiday Cinco de Mayo is actually tied in with this conflict. So, if Napoleon III had tried to establish a European monarch in Mexico, we would not be celebrating Cinco de Mayo as a holiday to this day. So, very interesting book. I really loved it. It's a very interesting period of history to read about. Authors, writing style, I really loved. It's one of my favorite nonfiction books I've read in the recent years, honestly. So I highly recommend The Last Emperor of Mexico by Edward Shawcross. It gets my full recommendation. So let me know in the comment section below, what is a random nonfiction book that you've read lately about an event you didn't really know a whole lot about that you really enjoyed? I'm always looking for those recommendations. If you enjoyed this review, please hit that like button. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate the support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you the next time, and happy reading.